Hello and welcome to Candid Conversation. Our guest today is Dr. Kumar Krishen. Dr. Kumar Krishen is a senior space scientist and technologist who has worked with numerous space missions, right from the Apollo missions to the Moon, Skylab, the Space Shuttle. And he keeps returning to India. He is from India, originates from Kashmir. He left India in the 1960s and keeps coming back to India and is associated as an honorary professor with various universities, giving lectures about living in space and about space science, and also about philosophy and ancient Indian wisdom as well. We are very privileged to have him with us on Candid Conversation today.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, let's start itself with life in space. And, we understand now we are understanding a little bit about gravity with LIGO being able to measure those gravitational waves. How important is gravity for life?
Gravity has had a profound effect on the life forms on this earth. You can see why. All we do is fight gravity day in and day out. From the time you get up in the morning, Mark, you're fighting gravity, climbing some stairs, even horizontally moving. It takes muscles to do this. And
right.
Once you exercise the muscles, the bones also get their food and so on and so forth. So for the development of the human body, right from the childhood, as you see, we have been accustomed and probably used to having gravity, and therefore we have evolved in that sense with gravity. But on the other hand, once you are in space station, as an example, you are nearly zero gravity, your muscles don't have to work, bones then don't get their nutrition like calcium, potassium, and so on and so forth. So it's a situation where the muscles get atrophy, get weaker, and bones get weaker too.
Right. So given what you're saying, and you've been studying space science now for 50 plus years, is it possible for us humans to consider, having settlements in space other than the space station, settling on, let's say, the moon or even Mars? Is it possible?
Anything is possible. They say, never say something is impossible. But of course, it is at a very great cost. So we'll have to be very careful about what we can learn by being on these planets like Moon or Mars. There's a lot to learn. You were talking about gravity. If we want to really explore the influence of gravity on life forms, especially humans, then we have a possibility of having 18% gravity on the Moon, 38% on the Mars, nearly 0% on space station or around the orbit of the Earth, and we have 1G. So you have 4 data points. Right. That itself may be significant to see how does gravity really influence our growth.
When we look at space and time, nothing is constant, right? Because what we are seeing in time, what we are understanding because of the speed of light has already happened some time before it actually reaches us. So everything is also moving, and what we are getting is not in real time. How do Indians understand the concept of time? How did ancient Indians understand this and to some extent actually map it?
Quite frankly, I don't know how, but I know that they gave a very nice description of time. In fact, they said that time is the most important ingredient in making things. So it's just like anything else, like hydrogen, oxygen, and so on, is also time, kala.
Right.
So what they did is they gave you a metric, and that surprises me. The smallest time they identified, quote unquote, as an atom of time is Truti, which is 1/10 of a nanosecond. The largest time, when I try to calculate it myself, because we have the lunar time, that's what the Indian philosophers did, and then you have the solar, motion of Earth around the sun. When you translate the largest time, which is considered in the language that we have been given in this land as life of Brahma, that comes to 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, etc., which are the digits of pi.
Okay.
So that itself is very profound to me.
So the digits of pi.
Digits of pi. Why? Because anything that is going around has somehow a pi associated with it.
Right.
So they must have realized that time is permanent and time is periodic. In other words, it's never ending, it's never beginning.
Right. So how relevant are these concepts of Thruti, Kala, Yug today?
Very relevant in this sense that I am thinking that time and space are married together. You know, if you go back, Mark, and ask this question, where did this universe come from?
Right.
Where is it going? We have to have an idea of time. A lot of people have this concept that time and space were created when we had this Big Bang, right? That to me seems not quite consistent with what was said in this land long time ago.
Right.
Because long time ago we have been told that time is there all the time.
Okay.
And now all of a sudden we are told that time was created. So I have asked this question to many people, including Nobel laureates, and all I have been getting, the answer I have been getting is it's all a philosophical answer. There is no good way to answer this question, and that's why we come back to India.
Okay.
Maybe some of the wisdom that was expressed here may be relevant. Now,
Right.
it needs to be studied in depth. I haven't, but it needs to be considered in the larger mosaic.
Okay.
You know, it's like pieces of puzzle, Mark.
Right.
You know, we have some pieces here and there. How do we bring it all together to understand space and time?
You are a scientist and you are also a devout Hindu, one of the founders of the Hindu Worship Society in Houston. How do religion, spirituality, and science meet? Where do you see this?
I see it in things like what Albert Einstein said. Gave us the concept of metaphysics. So beyond the senses, 5 senses, which has been said here in this land more or less like 5,000 years ago. If you have to understand divinity, you have to understand Mahamaya and so on and so forth. Beyond what we know through physics and science, then you have to cultivate this habit of going into that metaphysical world. And to me, that's where religion breaks the boundary.
Okay.
Religion tries to tell you that there is more to life than just 5 senses and what we see. And that more to life is very hard to describe. So, you know, a lot of people will ask you, Mark, where is God? Show me God. Show me Goddess. Do this, do that. It's difficult because a lot of this needs a greater understanding of metaphysics, a greater understanding of Mahamaya. And that unfolds itself if you understand universe.
So are these the concept that you're dealing with in your book, Why Me? Because it's philosophical, it's also conversations.
How are we here? Why are we here? You met me for the first time.
Right.
How did this come about? Is this accidental that Mark and Kumar are talking to each other? Or is there a greater plan that says that Mark and Kumar will meet on April 2nd at this time in Doordarshan?
Okay.
This is itself fascinating, isn't it? And a lot of people who do not believe in divinity and metaphysics, they will tell you everything is, of course, happens as an accident, right?
Okay. Right.
But there are other people at the other part of the spectrum, they will say, no, this is destined to happen. God has made it the plan for us to happen. Everything, zara moves because some divinity has said it will move.
NASA had discovered this path made by some life forms between India and Sri Lanka. It's a path, and you'll have a photograph of it as well. And what is it? It dates back over 1 million years. What does this actually indicate? And what are we talking about life forms?
It indicates a lot if you want to see that way, because in this land it was said through Ramayana that there was an attempt to connect Sri Lanka with India, and there was a short path. So you can see a lot of things in this. First of all, you can see that something concrete has happened. So there's no denial about that. Second thing is you can also think and rationalize yourself by saying that there must have been very shallow water, and maybe by throwing a few stones here and there, it got to a point that you could create a path. Over the years, more than million years, the water depth got more, and the sediments kept going higher and higher. Of course, with the technology that NASA has, we were able to see this path. The other side of this is, if you go through Ramayana...
But we only know life forms for what on Earth that we know of, it is about 60,000 years or something like that, right?
That's
what are
why
we talking about? Yeah.
This is why it's very intriguing.
Yeah.
And what's more intriguing is, if you look to Hanuman and all that, so it tells you that humans were not necessarily fully developed at that time in terms of the form. Maybe intelligence-wise, they were even more intelligent, or at least as intelligent as Mark and Kumar is. But the point is, it opens up a new window for us to think about. You know, that's what all science is all about, Mark. Mm-hmm. It's about thinking about things that we have no answers about, right?
Okay. We see objects by the speed of light, and we know that what we are seeing out there has happened long ago, and it has only reached us when we see it. So we are not seeing it in real time. And does this actually create a problem for you who is studying space? Because, I mean, what we are seeing is already happened.
Well, the reality is that these light waves are coming, and we are observing them after a few million years, if you go to Hubble and Chandra, and maybe even billion years. You know, we are trying to reach deeper and deeper through these telescopes. But you can take that into account by saying that, gee, I don't know exactly what's happening this moment anywhere. By the way, in this land, people were saying everything is Maya. Okay. The reality is not there. And this is also fascinating, you know, when you talk about Bharatvarsha, that people had thought about this maybe, that reality is something else. What we see is what has happened in the past. Okay, having said that, now we have data points of what has happened in the past. One of the things that science enables you to do is to model this, and just like the weather, you know, if somebody is observing the weather over a longer period of time in Delhi, then they can extrapolate it to tell you what will happen next week or week after, right? So that prediction comes only if you have a data set that you could rely and then develop some type of a model, physical, mathematical, whatever it is,
okay,
to project into the future or the present.
So what are you saying? You're saying that we can actually, because of this, predict the future? Or what are you saying that we can actually predict what's happening, or what?
First of all, we can
because
predict
of modeling.
Because of modeling. So if you have zero data, you have nothing to go about. So you keep observing this over a period of certain time, you have certain observations, and those observations are key. You put them in physical, chemical models and biological models. That then becomes your data set, and that's what enables you to predict. So I gave you a coarse example, or a loosely connected example of the weather.
The weather, yes.
So weather, you are observing over a period of time, and then you are projecting it over future, right?
Right. But it's still a projection, isn't it?
It's a projection, right?
Okay. We're going to take a short commercial break at this point in time. You're watching Candid Conversation. We are talking to Dr. Kumar Krishen, Senior Space Scientist and Technologist.
जहाँ छलका था अमृत का घट, जहाँ मोक्षदायिनी क्षिप्रा तट, जहाँ साधु मिले दूभर दुर्लभ, जहाँ पूज्य संत करते हैं तप। मोक्षदायिनी क्षिप्रा के तट पर अमृत का मेला, कुंभ महापर्व सिंहस्थ, 22 अप्रैल से 21 मई 2016, उज्जैन, मध्य प्रदेश।
आप सबने दुनिया भर में क्या मिसाल बनाई है। जिस सफाई से आपने कचरा वहीं फेंक दिया। और मन्नू आंटी क्या कूड़ा फेंकती हैं, ओलंपिक्स के गोला फेंकने वाले भी शर्मा जाएं। और ये देखिए, लक्ष्मी भाभी की सफाई तो गांव-गांव में प्रसिद्ध है। हमारे सुखिया भैया मन की करते, जहां सोचा वहीं शौच कर दिया। ये देश जो आप ही का घर है, उसे क्यों गंदा करते हैं? थोड़ी शर्म कर लो, सोच स्वच्छ कर लो।
अगर एक बार 125 करोड़ देशवासी तय कर लें कि मैं गंदगी नहीं करूंगा, तो दुनिया की कोई ताकत नहीं है जो हिंदुस्तान को गंदा कर सकती है।
स्वच्छ भारत, एक कदम स्वच्छता की ओर।
नीचे
काकी, घर में शौचालय कहाँ है? बहू को
घर में कहाँ, खुले में ही जाना पड़ेगा।
फिर तो तुम घूंघट भी खोल ही दो। एक तरफ तो आपको बहू का घूंघट भी सरकाना गवारा नहीं, और दूसरी तरफ उसे खुले में।
इस तरह तो हमने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था।
तो अब सोचो, घर में शौचालय बनवाओ और इस्तेमाल करो।
स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, एक कदम स्वच्छता की ओर।
जहाँ सोच वहाँ शौचालय।
Welcome back to Candid Conversation. Our guest today is Dr. Kumar Krishen, Senior Space Scientist and Technologist. Dr. Krishen, you have worked on keeping astronauts alive in space. That's basically the area where you're most familiar with, if one can say. What does it actually do to keep a human being alive in space? What's required?
Everything is required. For example, you take food. One of the things that we take for granted. How do you really keep the food in the most appropriate form? In other words, not get it destroyed and things like that. Preserve its food, nutrients and so on and so forth. So that itself is a problem. If I ask you to preserve something for 6 months, now for going to Mars, it will be more or less like 2.5 to 3 years.
Okay.
So variety of food. How do you keep an astronaut healthy with different forms of food? This is just a piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
But then comes the air, water, and how much water do you need? The point is, now it comes to what we call recycling the resources, because you are not able, because of the funding and so on and so forth, it's huge amount of money that you require for each kilogram to send to low Earth orbit, and it will multiply more as you go to Moon and Mars.
Right.
So you're doing this recycling in order to keep the astronauts healthy. Then there are other things, such as how do we know they will not come down with a physical
Right. How do you protect the body from radiation?
That's now, Mark, you are way ahead of me. I was coming to that point.
Okay.
Radiation is a big tall pole. As a matter of fact, most of the people haven't solved this yet. For a longer period of time, you know, this radiation is of course cosmic radiation. Then there are nuclear particles that can come through structures. They can destroy your electronics. Of course, for the humans, they can cause cancers. Even the temperature, how do you stabilize the temperature of the human being, right? So air, water, food, going to bathroom.
True.
You know, Mark, people criticize NASA because we were using huge amount of time for designing a toilet.
Okay.
So a lot of times you may have seen this. I even issued a challenge to some people. Go ahead and design. You will see yourself.
Right.
So little things become very complicated and complex.
Right.
When it comes to preserving life in space. Then I am very concerned, Mark, about the mental health. You and I know, you know, it's riding a rocket is almost certainly going to affect you mentally. Then riding a rocket to go to space, your weight gets to be 3 to 4 times more than what you are. So there is a big imbalance in terms of circulation of blood and things like that. Suddenly you're in the space like a feather.
Yes.
So a lot of things, you know, we think
So
there's a whole bunch
thought,
of you know, dilation going on in the eye, which affects your vision and so on and so forth, and the brain may also get different amount of blood. So heart, for example, heart doesn't get you don't get much exercise. Now we have made this treadmill and spongy and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And with that we give some muscle exercise and so on. So once the heart doesn't get that pumping exercise, you know, that you get here by running
Right.
and so on, what happens? Heart gets weaker. And by the way, you know, since you are talking, I have to mention one important thing. Once you have this extra calcium and potassium, so on and so forth, it goes in the kidneys and forms kidney stones.
Okay.
So one after the other.
Huge
It's
amount of problems that you want to think, yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have to go back and solve each one of them. And keeping humans
Right.
healthy in space is, of course, a frontier challenge.
You left India in the 60s for, you know, to understand and study abroad. Perhaps the facilities were not quite that good here in the country at that point of time. How do you look at India now? Because you've been coming back every, well, let's say, for the last 30 years. How has India improved in terms of science and providing the facilities for younger scientists to develop?
Oh, quite a bit. I go to several universities, and I think India is getting on par with Western, you know, universities and so on and so forth. There is still need for, you know, there is still room for improvement. For example, I'm associated with Rice University somewhat, and I see there, you know, they're doing what we call curiosity-based research, and it requires extremely sophisticated instrumentation.
Okay.
They're looking at both Einstein's condensation, they're looking at plasmons and so on, interactions at a fraction of the atom. So those things require a little bit of investment in terms of facilities and so on and so forth.
Right.
But in terms of the overall, it's quite a bit, you know, it's on par, I would say.
So what research did you do in the 60s with regard to the Apollo missions and, you know, later than that?
So when I went to Kansas State University, at Calcutta University, we had a project called Moon Relay Communication System. We were making a system that would bounce a signal off of moon, and let's say, for example, we would transmit the signal from Calcutta and bounce it off,
Right.
or now we call it Kolkata, and receive it in Delhi, and vice versa.
Right.
So we were going to use moon as a passive reflector. But, you know, Mark, that graduated me into accepting this scholarship or assistantship research
Right.
at Kansas State University, where I was given the challenge
Sure.
to talk about how can we say what the material on the moon is from the Earth itself.
Right.
So I was a little bit lucky because some measurements were being taken by Tversky and Evans
Right.
from Goldstone. You know, they were throwing the signals, microwave signals, and receiving them back.
Sure.
But I did my own experiments in the lab, in the university, taking different materials. Then I correlated the depolarization between these two measurements, and I was able to predict the material on the moon. So that was my contribution to Apollo. So then I graduated into learning about this layering effect.
Right.
How does the layers on the moon contribute to this signal?
Right. Now, India has achieved quite a lot of acclaim because of the Chandrayaan as well as Mangalyaan missions. What do you see the potential in the future for India in terms of space?
I see a great potential, and I hope India will consider, you know, sending humans in space, because it's a lot of learning. Mark, everything we have done in space has come back with benefits on the Earth, whether it's communication or medicine, hospital or your home or your phone.
Okay.
Everything that we have struggled to achieve in space has benefited us here on Earth. So this will be the story for India, you know. Additionally, Mark, India, like Honorable Modi said, wants to be Walmart for space technology. Now that's a big order, but it can be done. In other words, other countries can launch their satellites through India, develop their satellites here in India. So it's a big market for India. Right. So it's not like, you know, it's not detached from the economy, it's attached to the economy of India.
Is it best to use space currently as we know it only to understand, to launch satellites in space which map the Earth and help us with technology, communications, or you're talking about human space travel. What's more important? Where should we be focusing?
Everywhere. Really, everything is important. Communications is important. For example, watching the Earth and watching the space is important for us, because a lot of events that happen in space profoundly affect us here on the Earth, right? So it's not detached, it's an attached system. What happens in Antariksh is important to us. So bottom line is, now there is another segment of commercialization coming in, that people feel that just like you are going to Kulu Manali, some people will want to go to low Earth orbit, have 7 days of vacation there, come back renewed, maybe they will be taller by an inch or two. By the way, they lose that inch or two after they settle down here of a month or two. So it has become that. It has become a place that people may want to visit.
So it's been fascinating talking to you, sir, but you know, I mean, in the end, the question that comes to mind is what's out there? I mean, what's ready? What are we actually doing studying space? We don't really know too much about it after all that we've done. And should we, is it really worth it, you know, to continue understanding it as much as we can?
Absolutely, because we are a linked system. Earth is not separate. Earth is a part of the universe. So we need to understand what's happening outside in order to understand our own Earth. It's an attached system, you know. It's like everything is linked together. Sun is a part of what we are, right? No light means we are gone. That happened 65 years ago when we had this charismatic event where something fell on the Earth and dust covered the whole Earth. Light is gone. My point is, this is an attached system. You can't study a system by detaching yourself. So you need to understand what's going on. Now, the other thing, maybe it's me
the costs
thinking
I'm
like,
talking about, does it work out? Does it work out?
That's the point you know, once I put you in space, once a human being can live in space with in a healthy way, you are developing technology for recycling. For example, the way we have pollution in India and elsewhere in many countries, we will know how to recycle. We will know a lot of things, you know, like we need now recycling of water. Water is becoming a precious resource, right? So I feel like this is a good challenge to be in space, just because it is space and it's tough to be there. And therefore that toughness will translate into methods and technologies and processes here on the Earth.
Which will help us to stop global warming to some extent.
Definitely. I feel strongly about that, because I think if you are not put yourself to the most challenging circumstances, which is the space, and if you come out with being a winner in terms of surviving there, you automatically will survive on the Earth, in the sense that even the spacesuit, one of these days, we might have to live in very harsh climatic conditions on the Earth, right? So a form of spacesuit could be used to cover ourselves. So there's a lot of this technology that will translate here on the Earth after several hundred or thousand or million years.
Dr. Kumar Krishen, thank you very much for talking to us here on Candid Conversation.
I really appreciate your giving me this chance. Thank you, Mark.